they're actually getting less than. That's not a problem, but are they gonna wanna move it back? If they're gonna move the building? Doesn't matter. They can still mistake.
But I mean,
Practically speaking, that's like a whole other, but
that's the intro.
yikes. So then what?
No, it's gonna be a while. It's not gonna be next Wednesday. It'll be
January.
It'll be January.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
So how many things are they? So they have to get a conditional use permit. Then they have to do the site plan.
Conditional use and site plan.
Okay.
Just have their first.
You can't get one approved without the other.
We'll have to do the conditional use first.
Mhm.
So the use and then second. The approval, so there are 1 and 2. But
So if they don't approve the
Even if we
conditional use, then they won't be able to vote on the site plan.
well, they can vote on it. We run it.
But if they approve the site, they can recommend, but then if POC doesn't approve, take their recommendation.
Well, yeah. But they
Right.
don't approve use.
Then you can't use the property how you want to use it. Yeah. Well,
I mean, that's
and they. Depends on side of the road.
on Fosterman in the corner. Fosterman on.
You ready?
Go for it.
Hi, good evening. Today it's 7 o'clock and today is November 20th, Thanksgiving week, and we'll begin our meeting. So please excuse me, I'm new at this, so I'm still learning, so everybody bear with me here. But I do have the amble, don't upset me. First is call to order.
Mr. Hasse,
Here.
Mr. Seaman.
Here.
Mr. Parker. Mr. Coiner.
Here.
Mr. Terrapini.
Here.
Mr. Frayne.
Here.
Mr. Stavropoulos.
Okay. Next is approval of minutes from October 16th.
There's one small inaccuracy in the minutes under the election of officers, B, vice chairman. It says to nominate Mr. Seaman as chairman. That should be vice chairman.
Yeah, promoted.
So noted.
Co-chair.
And motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Second. We have a vote, please.
Say all in favor.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's approved. Thank you. We move on now to the quasi-judicial announcement and swearing in of speakers.
This is a quasi-judicial proceeding where the Planning and Zoning Board acts in a quasi-judicial rather than a legislative capacity. At a quasi-judicial hearing, it is not the board's function to make law, but rather to apply law that has already been established. In a quasi-judicial hearing, the board is required by law to make findings of fact based upon the evidence presented at the hearing and apply those findings of fact to previously established criteria contained in the Code of Ordinances in order to make a legal decision regarding the application before it. The board may only consider evidence at this hearing that the law considers competent, substantial, and relevant to the issues. If the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has met the criteria established in the Code of Ordinance, then the board is required by law to find in favor of the applicant. By the same token, if the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has failed to meet the criteria established in the Code of Ordinance, then the board is required by law to find against the applicant. Are there any members of the board wishing to disclose any conflicts of interest or ex parte communications this evening? Seeing none. Anyone wishing to speak this evening, including the applicants or any witnesses, please stand and raise your right hand to be sworn in. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So sworn.
Thank you. Next is application 15-95, site plan approval for In Touch Lawn Services at 25 West Martin Luther King Drive, Jr.
Good evening, everybody. This is a site plan approval for a 6,400 square foot office and associated storage building for a lawn care business. It's located just 150 feet west of the intersection of Martin Luther King Drive and South Pinellas Ave. And it's located in the special area plan in the South Pinellas Character District, and it's in the community redevelopment area. Essentially, this property has been vacant. It consists of 3 lots, and the applicant is asking to create a building that is consistent with the Land Development Code. This particular character district, which extends from Boyer to Morgan Street, is characterized by a retail quarter with a mix of ground floor retail uses with residential or office uses on the secondary floor. The proposed building is a 2-story building consisting of two second floor offices and a storage area below. There are 5 parking spaces that are proposed, 1 paved and it's ADA compliant, and 4 spaces that are on alternative gravel surface. The applicant is proposing limited pavement and has been granted an ERP individual permit at this time. That's part of your packet if you're interested in seeing the permit. The applicant will be removing 15 trees from the site. At the time of permitting, a tree removal permit was required, and mitigation will be applied to the site. A landscaping showing the addition of 8 trees and a variety of shrubs and ground covers included, and 1 additional tree will be needed to be added to the landscaping plan as shown on the plant list. Right now, the plant list doesn't jive with what's on the actual plan, so that'll have to be corrected. With that, the project did not exceed the threshold for a traffic impact analysis, and the other concurrency standards have been met as of the time of this report. With that, there's no request for a change in the comprehensive plan designation, the land development code designation, and the site plan is consistent with all of the land development code and the comprehensive plan sections and provisions. And with that, staff is recommending approval of this project with the following conditions. The developer is responsible for acquiring all other jurisdictional permits or approvals and for meeting the minimum criteria of the Land Development Code, including compliance with the public art program. The applicant must mitigate for any tree removal at the time of permitting pursuant to LDC Section 133.06. Water and sewer infrastructure shall be privately owned and maintained. Construction plans shall be consistent with the approved site plan. The payment of all requisite fees attendant to the project shall be paid in accordance with the Land Development Code. The site plan shall expire within 1 year of the effective date unless the application has been filed with the building permit with construction plans signed and sealed by a registered engineer licensed in the state of Florida. Any site lighting shall be shielded and directed inward to the project, and there shall be no outdoor storage of material or equipment on site. The alley shall be evaluated by the Public Works Department, and if required, shall be paved to city standards. 1 additional tree needs to be added to the landscape plan as shown on the plant list and requirements. And number 10, the 6-foot-high chain link fence with the opaque material must be kept in good condition. Any tears in the opaque material shall be replaced immediately. And with that, I can answer any questions that you might have.
I have a couple.
Okay.
The alleyway shall be paved to city standards. I mean, what does that mean? What are our city standards?
Our city-
Right now, it's a pretty bad alleyway.
Yeah, right now it's broken up, so it needs to be evaluated by the Public Works Department, and then they will be required to put in the required base coat and top layer to meet the city standards for alleyways.
Okay, and the 6-foot-high chain link fence with the opaque material. I know there's some there now, and it seems to get ripped up pretty easily. So how do we know what's immediately, and how do we know when they have to replace it? Does somebody have to complain, or does we just drive by and we decide that, or what happens?
Well, certainly you could put in you could change that condition to read within 24 hours of notification if that's what you want, if that's how you want them to comply. But generally, it's through either we drive by and see that it's been ripped, or we get a complaint from somebody who's an adjacent neighbor, that type of thing, and then we have them address it. And that's done generally through the building development division.
Thank you.
Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Heather, the front elevation of the building faces MLK, correct?
Correct.
And then the rear doors that we're seeing are simply rear doors, so you
They're-
basically pull into the parking lot
From
from
this,
the alley,
Mhm.
and there's no issue with the visibility triangle, that's already been,
Nope, that's already been evaluated. There's sufficient room right now, since they're kind of changing the way that site's accessed. It's currently accessed from MLK. Obviously, your special area plan doesn't want to address that. We wouldn't want to push everything onto the alleyway for rear access, so that's already been evaluated. The clear visibility triangle meets the requirements of the code.
so in relation to the 6-foot high chain link fence, that's only for a portion of the property?
Yeah, it looks like the way that the applicant has changed the plan slightly from originally when we did the review for this. They've kind of pushed back the fence and to tie it in with the building, but you'll still have that gate along the alleyway side.
And the applicant's seen the staff recommendations in terms of the outdoor storage and equipment on site?
The applicant's been provided a copy of the staff report, and they are here to speak to that staff report.
Ready? Thank you.
At this time, do we ask for any
The applicant's turn.
applicants to? Okay, at this time, we'd like any applicants that like to speak on their behalf or answer any questions. When you come up, please state your name and address, please.
Anthony Marcello. I own the property at 25 West MLK in Tarpon Springs. On my current address where I live,
Mm-hmm.
18011 Patterson Road in Odessa.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And you can choose to make a statement. If you don't have a statement, the board will ask.
Yeah, the only thing I want to make a comment on is that mesh is not going to be there anymore.
Okay.
It's going to be all nice landscaping, trees and plants and bushes all around.
Then with that, we would have to have them change that particular condition. So when we get to a motion, we'll need to read that into the record, that change condition.
Okay, thank you. Did the board have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
I have a few. You're currently there right now, correct?
No, I moved out.
There's
I moved
also, there's
everything
some equipment stored there right now?
No, I had moved everything out.
Okay. And are you planning on doing any of the road improvements or anything in the alleyway there? Because I'm assuming that you're gonna have to access that.
Yeah, we that's how we access now. We come in and out.
Okay.
So if it's required, we'll do whatever has to be required.
Anyone else? Any questions? No? Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Any more
you.
statement? Nothing?
No, and I know about the outside storage. Keep it nice and clean and neat, and that's the purpose of the building, is keep everything neat and clean and organized, out of sight of everything. Out of sight of everything around there, so it looks nice when people drive by.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
At this time, we have board comment?
No, at this time, we have any members of the public wishing to speak either for or against the application?
I'm sorry.
You'll
He's
get
getting
there.
there.
You're gonna
I'm
get
getting there, I'm getting there. So does anyone in the public have any comments or questions about this property? No?
Now it's time for board
Now it's time, so the public
to close.
public
The public portion of the meeting is closed.
public portion of this meeting is closed, excuse me. And board, any comments from the board?
So, Mr. Chairman, for clarity, you're wanting to add something to the staff's recommendations in terms of the screening on the fence?
Not necessarily, I'm more concerned with the alleyway. I'd like to make sure that alleyway is constantly in problems there, and if there's more traffic back there, there'll be a problem. But if the city has already made a comment that it has to be approved by or recommendation by the city. Did I read that correct?
What it basically says is the alleyway shall be evaluated by the Public Works Department. If they deem it that it needs to be paved, and if it's deemed to be necessary, they're required and shall pave it to city standards.
That-
So if it's deemed by the Public Works Department that it needs to be paved, it's going to be paved at the time of permitting.
The whole alleyway or just the portion?
The
in front of
portion on
the
their property.
Okay, so it'd be a assessment or a cost share or something?
Well, they'll have to either work that into their construction drawings, or they can work out with Public Works what mechanism by which Public Works will do that now. So if they're going to do it in-house, they may pay a fee in lieu or something like that, but that's something that the Public Works Department will work out with them at the time of construction approval. So when the plans actually go for building permit for approval, because they're going to need to evaluate it and determine what's required.
Is the alleyway shared by I think there's a restaurant there and a liquor store, so is that part, would they? have to
Those
put
individual
portion-
businesses that are along the alleyway would only be required to pave their portion of the alleyway, and only at the time that they go to update their process. So this was a vacant lot. This happens to be a vacant lot. So this is our opportunity to have them pave their portion of that section of right of way. That doesn't necessarily mean that the entire alleyway is going to be paved and repaired at the same time. That would be up to the Public Works Director. If he has the means under which to do that, he may go ahead and make that one continuous project. But otherwise, the applicant's going to require to cover their portion of it.
Thank you.
And I just want to read the modified condition 10 into the record. If you choose to approve this, the 6-foot high chain link fence must be kept in good condition is what that would read.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, no more comment? At this portion, then we would take a vote.
You need a motion
yeah, I
first.
move-
Motion, please.
I move to approve, what is this application number?
15-95.
15-95. Move to approve application 15-95 with the change to staff recommendation and condition number 10, that the chain link fence will be, what'd you say?
Must be kept in good
Must be kept in
Must
good
be
condition.
kept in good condition.
For a second,
Second.
Further discussion?
further discussion? No? Then we'll take a vote, please.
Mr. Frayne,
Yes.
Mr. Terrapini,
Yes.
Mr. Coiner,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Hasse.
Yes. So moved. All right, so we move on. Application 1791, site plan approval for Lemon Center Block 2, lots 3 and 4. LS Fernandez subdivision located on the north side of Lemon Street, approximately 97 feet west of the intersection of East Lemon Street and South Levis Avenue.
Again, this is site plan approval for Lemon Street Center, which is an 8,000 square foot light industrial building. The owner, applicant, and agent on the project is George Zoots. And essentially what's included in the request is the 8,000 square foot light industrial building with associated parking and a stormwater management facility. This again is located in the special area plan, and it's in the T4B transect, which is a residential and industrial transect. It's located in the downtown character district. The applicant is proposing the construction of a 8,000 square foot single-story warehouse that's on a currently vacant lot. The proposed development will include associated parking, loading, and dumpster pad. Development will also feature a stormwater management facility located below a pervious parking lot. The site is located in the city's historic district, and the applicant was granted a certificate of approval for the proposed development from the Tarpon Springs Heritage Preservation Board. There is no request for a change in the comprehensive plan designation or the land development code designation for the property. And the applicant has demonstrated compliance with both the concurrency management system and the concurrency requirements and all of the site planning provisions of the land development code. Technical review committee has reviewed the application and deemed it complete and in compliance. With that, staff finds the application of the site plan approval consistent with the applicable review criteria, and therefore the staff recommendation is approval of the site plan subject to the following conditions. Developer is responsible for acquiring all other jurisdictional permits or approvals and for meeting the minimum criteria of the Land Development Code, including compliance with the public art program. The applicant must mitigate for tree removal at the time of permitting pursuant to LDC section 133.06. Any lighting to be installed on site shall be shielded and directed internal to the site. Construction plans shall be consistent with the approved site plan. The payment of all requisite fees attendant to the project shall be paid in accordance with the Land Development Code, and the site plan shall expire within 1 year of the effective date unless the applicant has filed for building permit and construction plans signed and sealed by a registered engineer licensed in the state of Florida. And I can answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Do we know what the building will be used for?
At this time, the applicant is trying to find tenants to go in the space. It's going to be either one large tenant, or they will break up the space. Currently, he's planning on breaking up the building. Obviously, 8,000 square feet is a pretty big single user who'd come into the downtown, but he's trying to leave, some flexibility built in there. So he doesn't currently have a tenant, but light industrial is the type of uses that he's looking at. Those type of uses would be small printers. You could have artists come in here. I mean, Lemon Street is an industrial corridor. However, there are folks on that corridor who are more artisan-related type uses and that type of thing. So the applicant is not trying to hold himself to one particular use. He's just looking for a building where artists or those type of things could utilize. And those spaces, those workshop type spaces, seem to be a good niche for artists to come into. You could also have incubators for smaller businesses trying to get a handle where they're sharing spaces. There's a couple of different options that he could kind of look into that would still fit under that or be compatible with a light industrial building.
There is a variety of businesses on that street, so almost everything you can think of. So, okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Ask the board if anybody has any comments.
The board? Thank you.
Heather, this property, 0 lot lines here, right?
Correct.
And the elevation of the building will be oriented to the east, right?
There's a parking lot right against the church's parking lot, and then the building, the front is going to be oriented towards Lemon, but it's a long, narrow lot. So as a result, the building to be turned to the frontage, he wouldn't be able to access it except for the alleyway. And that alleyway is by no means a place we want people going. It's just not big enough. So as a result, he's going to kind of have two frontages where it's going to be oriented that direction, but really the front of the building will be Lemon Street.
And so in a multiple tenant situation, how do you address the signage?
The signage will be under the multiple tenant language in the Land Development Code. It's a little bit restrictive because they're in the historic district, so they're going to be down to the smaller allowances rather than getting what most multi-tenant parcels would be allowed to have. They'll get the small end of that, but each individual business can have their own wall signage, and then there can be a multiple tenant sign either on Lemon or, well, in this case on Lemon. That's his sign allowances for freestanding and for wall signage. They're just restricted down simply because the sizing limitations in the historic district are much smaller than what you can get out in any of the other districts.
And is there a variance that you can seek for something like that within this district if you wanted to do a fancier sign or a bigger sign?
They could seek a variance, but the problem is they're going to ask for a variance to basically the HPB guidelines, so that HPB is going to want to weigh in on that variance. So it'd be a very interesting application because you'd have two boards that would really need to weigh in on that because the Heritage Preservation Board is going to have some real interesting comments specifically on increasing signage within the historic district because you're really pinpointing one particular place. It's really kind of not a fair shake to do that by variance. If you want to look at allowing for larger signage, it really should be district wide, not one particular parcel. But yeah, you certainly can go through a variance. The problem is when you're asking for more signage, that's a problem. You can't get more sign face than what you're entitled to in your district. What you could do at that time is ask for a variance to essentially the historic restriction rather than asking for the larger signage outright. You'd have to get creative with the way you would word that.
So, because this is in a character district, basically the closest thing you would have to like an architectural review or guidelines would be going through the Historic Preservation Board,
Correct.
which the application did.
Correct.
Did I see somewhere in the applicant or in the backup that that's not necessarily required?
No, they're required to go before for their rendering, for their facade rendering to the Heritage Preservation Board. Heritage Preservation Board, again, this is a non-contributing parcel because it was vacant for such a time, is looking at the compatibility of that new structure with the contributing structures in the surrounding area. And again, you're dealing with a characteristic, a district that is industrial and commercial in nature. So it's really kind of difficult to kind of say, well, it doesn't fit the criteria there when you're dealing with commercial to commercial.
Right. And then, so it went to Historic Preservation Board, and they made recommendations, which were what?
They approved
They
the
approved.
application.
They approved the application.
I think I have their letter in here. Hold
Yeah,
on.
I saw it somewhere.
I think it's in here. I have to go back and read it.
Yeah, so they made conditions. And the third condition was the facade of the building should be consistent or similar to the rendering provided as evidence in Exhibit A.
Correct.
So I guess this
It's
is Exhibit
yeah,
A?
that's not a really good. I mean, I didn't pull all of HEB's application out.
Oh.
That is similar to what the applicant presented, two different renderings, and they determined at the meeting which rendering that they would prefer. That was the preferred rendering.
And
But
this
again,
is-
it's
this
going to
is
be
just-
consistent with, because this is a picture, not of that building.
Yeah, I get it. No, I mean, I happen to like it. That's why I was curious. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Your turn.
At this point, we'd invite the applicant, thank you, to please state your name and address, please.
It's 46 West Lemon Street in Tarpon. A clarification on the elevation to the front, which is a requirement that we have a storefront on Lemon Street, and that's what I'm proposing. And there was two conceptual renderings that I submitted to the historic board. One of them has a big awning out in front, and the other one was more of that Drive It product that's on the front, more of a stucco look. And I think that the board said either one of those was acceptable. They had opinions of both. But it's going to be a nice looking front on it. It'll have a storefront, which is required. And just try to dress it up a little bit more. And we talked to the planning department that instead of a regular blacktop parking lot, I'm going to put brick pavers in.
Nice.
And try to jazz it up as much as I can within reason to be able to make it more attractive to the market there. But, you know, there's the balancing act of cost of construction versus what rents are, you know. So prospects I have right now, in the perfect world, I'd love to have an artist in it like that. I am talking to a photographer about it right now, but it's a little further down the road that you can really start to get a commitment from a tenant at this time. But I'd love to have somebody that would add to the flair of what we're trying to accomplish in the neighborhood there. But at the end of the day, as long as it's acceptable to the city, I got to take those into the rent and the checks clear, you know. So working on it.
Does the board have any questions? No? I have one. I mean, the way the property is situated, you're off of, I guess you're not even on Levis Street, are you? So it would have to be,
There's almost 100 feet on Lemon Street, right?
okay. All right, no, I have nothing. At this point, we close the
At this point,
Open.
any members of the public wishing to speak for or against the application? Seeing none, then we
none.
close
We
the
will now
public portion
close
of the
the
hearing.
public
Thank you.
participation. Thank you.
You're going to have this down by next meeting. It's
I
gonna
know,
be
man.
perfect.
You know, I can't remember my high school stuff, so it's going to take a while. Bear with me. So, at this point, will the board have any other questions? Any comments? None? All right. Then we call
Call for
a
a motion?
motion, please.
Move that we approve application 17-91, give the site plan approval to the Lemon Street Center.
Did you want to
As
do that with the conditions?
with
of
the conditions as discussed.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
further discussion?
Further discussion? I see none. Take a vote, please.
Mr. Frayne,
Yes.
Mr. Terrapini,
Yes.
Mr. Coiner, Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Hasse.
Yes. So moved. Thank you. Well, we move on now to number 6, staff comments.
And I'll be very brief. You will have a meeting at your next meeting, and there will be at least 3 applications. So the meeting is on December 18th, but we have at least 3 applications at that meeting at this time.
Applications
For a site plan, I think there's a conditional use and 2 site plans possibly, or maybe it's just 2 site plans. That'll be coming before you. What else I have on here is literally just your 2018 public hearing agenda or public hearing schedule. I wanted you guys to get a copy of this. If you have any concerns or comments, questions with specific dates or that type of thing, please let us know and we'll try to address those. We're in the process of trying to get you a new alternate because your alternate who was appointed when the 3 new board members who were appointed at that time can't serve. She's had some issues with scheduling and things that have changed since she put in her application. So she apologizes for that, but she's going to be rolling off the board. So we'll try to get you an alternate at the next available BOC meeting.
Who is that?
It was Gabby Pace, Gabriella Pace, but she's not available. So we'll try to get you another board member appointed just as soon as we can, another alternate. With that, that's all that I have.
Okay, thank you. Any board comments? I see none.
Move for adjournment.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 End of the meeting. Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Hard to believe it's here already.
I know. 41 days left in the year.
Oh, yeah, anybody who does not want their site plans for at least MLK, if you could pass them down, I would appreciate that. The applicant would really appreciate it, since he won't have to reproduce them.
Let's see.
You got there, I know, I got 3, so I really only need 3 more. I really only need 4, because one of the board members doesn't really care about one.
I have a,
Take what I can get.
Want the little ones?
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay. There's the big ones.
Thank you. Make sure you hear the
Dust
car.
is all,
use your phone.
put that,
Okay.
put it back in here. I guess I did the right thing by crossing that out. Is that okay?
Are you sleeping?
Thank you for putting up with me.
Peter, Mom.
I just play with the, well, I mean, she breastfeeds her.
Hey, Townsend, I have a question for you. When you put a
I haven't
fence up,
decided.
does it have to face your neighbor, the good side, or not? Is there someone asked me that, and I'm like, I can't remember.
Generally speaking, that's the case.
Well,
Yeah.
is it,
But
but
is that
is
a
it the law?
It usually is, but I haven't.
In some
checked
places
into
it does, in some places it does, in some places
I've always
it
kind
doesn't.
of wondered that myself because, maybe you want the good side to face you.
Right, and in this case, this
Ow.
guy
That's what I
has a
thought.
fence there, the neighbor has
I
a
don't know
fence.
if
They wanna build a fence,
I'll take another advice.
slat
Well,
at a
if they
time,
pull a permit,
and they
they
can't
do.
get between it, so he says, I can only build it on my side.
You.
So I said, well, you
You
got to
do
call
this-
the building
yeah,
department,
you
but I
do.
can't remember. Of anybody saying, would you know? Would you know if you could build a fence? Good side facing in or out?
It has to face out unless there's a group of provisions that you can meet in the land development code that lets you flip the fence. You don't need a variance to flip it, but you have to meet those conditions. And I don't know them off the top.
Why
But
not?
if you want, I'll send them to you.
That's a pretty good answer regardless.
Damn,
Be
that's
glad
a
to
damn
s-
good answer.
I'd be glad to send them to you tomorrow morning. You'll have the section of code that applies.
Really? Would you please?
You
Okay,
got to.
thank you.
Because there is some criteria. If you can meet that, then you can flip
Yeah,
the fence.
a friend of mine just asked me about that, and he says, I can't, my neighbor has this really happy small fence. He says, I want to put a fence up, and it's going to be a individual board built fence. on my.
Oh. So yeah, normally you would have the basically the post into you,
Mm-hmm.
and then the flat nice space
Right.
would be on the other side. If you want to flip it, there is criteria though to do it. And it's not a variance. It's literally just meets this criteria in the code. If you can do that,
Okay,
then it might work for him. So I'll send it to you.
all right, thank you so much. You have my email?
Yeah, I got it. I can do that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks for putting up with me, guys.
Not at this time. It's literally in the long-range transportation plan, but there is no active interest right now to